Well, hello, I'm Beau Higgins here, taking you today on our latest MilVet podcast. Great to be here with a fellow Marine, Cassidy Nolan of Mach 1 Hot Sauce and other things. So, looking forward to sharing a little bit about his journey to where he got today. It's an interesting journey, one that we actually overlapped a little bit as Intel members of the Intel community in the Marine Corps, which I know we'll talk about a little bit as well. But great to be here today and great to have you here, Cassidy, and would love to have you just give an introduction kind of overview for the audience.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Bill. Well, as you said, my name is Cassidy Nolan. I did 5 years in the intelligence community at 1st Marine Division G2 with two deployments to Afghanistan. Joined right out of high school. I really wanted to get that upward mobility that the military offers, coming from like a working class family. And it just seemed like the best choice for me. And, I did my enlistment and I got out and I wanted to pursue a degree in business. And I went to, first community college, and then I was able to transfer to Haas School of Business and completed a degree. And I ended up being an accountant for the Clark's company. And I worked in finance for LVMH, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. And it was around that time that actually it was back in college. My wife bought me a beer making kit. And I came from a culinary background. I used to work for Thomas Keller, who, by the way, his father was a Marine drill instructor at MCRD San Diego. And always grew up in a kitchen, but I never really fermented anything before. And when my wife bought me this beer making kit, I absolutely fell in love with it. And I started to ferment my own beer, and I made kimchi and sourdough, and I finally landed on hot sauce. And when I was doing accounting or working in finance, something I'd always do is I'd give beer out and I'd give hot sauce out. And it got to a point where everyone really wanted the hot sauce, and I had to put QR codes to know who was trying it, what they thought, so I could keep a list to make sure everybody got some. And it was a very rewarding experience. It was probably the best part of those jobs because I absolutely despise accounting. And anybody who does it, you have my respect. And um, after a few things happened, which we could probably talk about later, but I ended up, going back to grad school, got my MBA, and then worked on a business plan and finally launched our hot sauce business.
That's awesome. I mean, I love the fact. I mean, kind of the grit, that you have shown to get there, and I like to think that's a quality that most Marines have, and most of our veterans have. And again, I'd love to kind of, if you could maybe talk a little more. Certainly, coming from the enlisted side of the house and looking at the Marine Corps as an opportunity to, I say escape, maybe the wrong word, but to kind of reframe what your future would be. How did your experience in the military help shape and kind of make you maybe successful to get you where you are today? I mean, what do you take from that experience that is really something that was important to you to be successful moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think probably one of the most critical things was the mentality that the Marine Corps, or the culture that the Marine Corps provides. And yes, there's honor, courage, commitment, but it's a level of discipline. It's, mission oriented, adapt, improvise, and overcome. And when the culture sort of supports this, um, you know, get the, accomplish the mission, get the task completed, and however necessary it may be, to get there, was something that I absolutely loved, and that came from, working smarter, not harder. Sometimes it really did just kind of take brute strength. Sometimes you have to get really creative. You'd have to grease tracks, like if you had to get a sign off from admin or supply, a log of cope or something like that can usually get that to happen. So I know that sounds kind of bad, but the ingenuity where you have to do more with less is very much a Marine Corps sort of aspect. And I absolutely embrace that today in everything that I do. What can I do with what I have? And, just like this force multiplier kind of aspect to it. And, you learn to be really lean, you learn to be really efficient. Um, kind of like, what are your metrics? Your metrics are, I have to at least get this done. Now, what do I need to do to get that done? So that type of training and discipline and mentality and culture has absolutely stuck with me to this day. And I think that that's probably one of the best things that you could get when joining the military. I mean, the camaraderie as well, the training, the life experience. I think we often look past of at 18, even if you're in supply, you're looking over millions of dollars worth of equipment. There's so much trust and faith instilled at such a young age that it's impossible for you not to be impacted once you get out and you kind of move on. And I think that's one of the many reasons that a lot of veterans struggle when they're trying to like find a job. They're trying to find a job that gives them the same amount of satisfaction and trust and faith from their employer. And when it falls short, they really, they could get disenfranchised from it.
Yeah, it's certainly just a couple things I'll hit on there. I mean, one, it's I think certainly the Marine Corps prides itself on doing less with more, right, and having the worst
Yes.
conditions and having worst barracks and the worst gear, but
Yeah.
yet
The
being the
worst
most
chow.
successful, right? The worst chow, exactly, 100%. We're at the bottom of the food chain a lot of times when it comes to the gear and the issue of stuff like that. But it does. I think it's something that as a result of that, you have to be creative. You have to think outside the box and just use what you got, which sometimes isn't a whole lot. But 100%, I love how you've taken that, those lessons learned from the Marine Corps and been able to, I'm sure, apply them not only in your current business but to everything you've been able to do to get to where you are in the entrepreneur space. Because again, obviously, starting out in this space, and we'll talk about it some more. You're scrapping out there, man, just trying to figure it out. And just, it's a lot
Yeah.
of just, kind of pushing through adversity, not having a lot of resources. You don't have all the money you need. You don't have all the, the support and connections you need, but just
Yes.
making it happen every day and kind of scrapping to make it happen. And that's just, and never, and it's without grit, having that grit to say, I may not have everything, but I believe in my mission. I know what I'm doing. I'm trained up to do this kind of thing, and no one else is here to help me. I just got to do it myself.
Yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
look around for somebody else. It's like, hey, I got this. This is my baby, so I better take it and run with it. I can't bitch about it. I just better keep on getting after it, right?
Yeah, man, Bo, you're jazzing me up. Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. Yes. Uh, Absolutely.
But then, so all right, so you obviously you get out, and then you obviously before you got here, you did some more. I guess I say just a white collar kind of typical accounting job that obviously didn't sit well with you. How'd you get into that role, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah, well, you know what? True story. When I got out, I did a lot of blue collar work prior to that. The first job I got out, and I remember my lieutenant, at the time, he said, "So you're going to get, you do intelligence, you have a top secret clearance, you're going to get out and you're going to go clean porta potties." And that was the first job that I had a job lined up. It was this gentleman here in our hometown, Napa, California, who was a prior, he was a Marine in Vietnam, Purple Heart recipient. He's missing half his calf. And when he got out, he had the same sort of grit mentality of like, I'm not going to let any of these things kind of slow me down. And he started a porta potty business, which is very lucrative in Napa because grapes are picked by hand. So by OSHA, mandate, you need to have at least one porta potty for every 8 employees. And there's only three porta potty companies in Napa, so there was a lot of money, a lot of market to address. And he needed somebody to clean the porta potties. And I have absolutely no shame on honest work, right? Um, so I cleaned porta potties for a year and a half. I then transitioned into construction, and I was like hired as a project engineer, and I would do manual labor half the days to kind of know the ropes. And it was one of those like, man, this is super demanding work. A lot of these guys, they're incredibly smart, but if you looked at it on a long term, what exactly are you, unless you're working to be the super or own your own construction business, even if it's high end winery or homes, there isn't just a lot of real opportunity that exists. It's incredibly labor intensive, it's incredibly capital intensive. And I just wasn't having a lot of fun doing it. And I, coming from the intelligence community, I was very good with computers, very good with analytics. And I was pursuing a degree in business, and I just wanted to get the associate's degree and use my educational benefits. Um, and it was, at some point a counselor had mentioned, you have decent grades. You should really apply to like a 4 year and get a business degree. And at that point, I decided on Berkeley Haas. It's considered one of the best business schools in the state, and then one of the better ones in the nation. So I applied there, and I just wanted to go back and open a business of my own. I wanted to possibly take over this porta potty business once again. But the zeitgeist that existed at Cal was, and I think this is true for probably every business school, is what's called the ABCs, the accounting, banking, and consulting business. And a lot of these schools, whether it be, Sloan or Rice University or Haas or Harvard or Stanford or Northwestern, it's all these feeder schools into these, big firms, the big four, BCG, McKinsey, whatever it is. Um, and there was a lot of money to be made, and a lot of the students were kind of gunning for that. And I had never knew about it prior, but I fell into that sort of trap of like, this is where you can make your money. This is where you can have this upward mobility. And once again, I came from a family that we grew up on WIC and food stamps, and we had welfare Christmas, um, and and it's not like I'm never ashamed of my roots, but it's definitely a harder lifestyle. And I didn't want to subject my kids to that kind of thing. So I recruited for an accounting position with the Clark's company, which is, their headquarters is here in Oakland. They've been here since like 1918, I think. And they've been a feeder school for Berkeley Haas. I applied. They said I did so good on the interview, they're going to give me a job position higher, and I had a $10,000 signing bonus. And at that time, at like 28, I thought this is the most money I've ever made, and what a deal to be had. And even though I did mediocre in accounting, so I took the job, and immediately I knew from day one it was like, oh, this was a terrible mistake. But because you took that signing bonus, there's a clause of if you get fired in 2 years or you resign in 2 years, you have to pay the money back. And for my wife and I and our four kids, that money was already spent to pay off debt and help finance the moving and everything else. So I felt like I was really locked in, and I felt trapped. Um, so I kind of resorted to like, how can I once again be scrappy in this position? How can I make up more money? Because the cost of living is higher now. Something I didn't really think about that would impact me as much as it was. So I started to try and help people with resumes, and do that on the side. For a creative aspect of like enjoying going to work was creating hot sauce and beer, because that was the only connection I had with my fellow, peers. Because there is a disconnect that exists, and I'm sure you've experienced that too when you were at Amazon. Even though they have a very veteran-focused mentality, it is hard for you to connect with your peers when you come from such different backgrounds, whether that be like socioeconomic or simply just once again your military history. So having that connection was something that was really beneficial. And then not to get too far into it, but there does come a time where the job experience that you have, especially out of college, is the only job that will hire you for you to maintain that level of income. So you kind of get pigeonholed if you're doing a job that you, at the end of the day, don't really enjoy doing. You're locked in because you get so much experience in that field that when you want to try to transition into something else, um, they either won't accept you because you don't have experience, or you will have to take a significant pay cut. And for us, we just couldn't really afford it. So I stayed in finance, and I knew that if I were to want to do something else, I would eventually most likely have to go back to college. But some of those decisions were made for me in a way.
Yeah. No, it's again, you never know how the road is going to take you. And again, your path from, cleaning porta potties to,
Yeah, yeah,
to accounting, was
yeah,
just maybe not as, maybe worse than cleaning porta potties in some ways, although
yeah,
maybe paid a little
yes,
more, wasn't as
yeah,
fulfilling, didn't.
yes, yeah. Here's the thing about cleaning porta potties. Yes, it's a dirty job. Yes, it stinks, literally. Um, but the best part is, hey, look. here's a truck, here's your route, here are the units you need to clean. It's mission oriented and it's very cut and dry. Did you clean it or not, right? And yeah, I only made $3,000 a month cleaning porta potties, and then when you worked in, accounting, you could make 5 to 6 thousand. Um, but that simplicity that existed was something I really enjoyed, and in a sense, that was kind of like this aspect of, entrepreneurial, and you could grow it, right? If you could get more accounts, yes, you're giving yourself more work, but then you're giving yourself more income, and um, yeah, it's probably one of the better jobs I've had, just because you could be left to your own devices and put on earphones, drive around, clean up, and you see the fruits of your labor. It was a dirty
Yeah.
porta potty. Now it's a clean one, and on to the next one, right? So,
Hey, I
yeah,
will say I took my time in Iraq burning porta potties
yeah,
are expedient ones there. So I definitely understand. Well, even worse there, the diesel fuel will get you
yeah,
there, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did a lot of the for all the people that have experienced the wag bags,
yeah,
at least that's how it was in Afghanistan. We never used, we didn't do like the big 50-gallon drums with the JP8. It would
yeah.
be a burn pit, but we had the wag bags. You just, throw it right in.
And I'll tell you, it's funny. So I went to University of Virginia. When I finished college, before I joined the Marine Corps, I had a job back in New Orleans. I was working in a shipyard as a tack welder. It was, it's 100 degrees. You're wearing jeans and flannel shirts. It was a non-union shipyard, getting paid like $10 an hour. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, this is grim. I don't know. I got a college degree. I
Ha!
can't. It makes you appreciate like what you don't want to do. I'm like, okay, I see these guys that
Yeah.
have been here for 20 years. I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't do that. So you like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do a good job, but there's definitely more for me besides, working in the shipyard, catching on fire, and occasionally working the welding torch, so I get it,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. How are your eyes, right? I
Yeah.
think yeah, eyes, and then you get a lot of the UV
Yeah, it was rough. So
exposure.
it was definitely the Marine Corps was almost a break from that. I don't
Yeah.
say a break, but I mean compared to crawling through little spaces as a 6'5" guy, it was
Yeah.
it was not my cup of tea. But yeah, but it grounds you, right? I mean, it gives you like,
Yes.
hey, this is where I'm at today, and if I want to improve myself, I got to find a different path. And again, you're obviously
Yes.
finding that path. I'm curious, and you hit on a little bit. What was it like being at Berkeley as a guy that had been in the Marine Corps? Those seem the extreme ends of the spectrum. I
Opposites.
mean, I know
Yes.
there's not much. I mean, I think there is a small veteran presence at Berkeley, I assume, but it's got to be
Yes.
one of the most challenging, most unique places to be in college as a veteran. Was that fair to say?
Yes, it is. I think at Berkeley, there's no more than like 300 veterans at a time, generally speaking. And this is um, a university that has something like 36,000 students, I want to say, like in rotation. Um, I was very shielded in a way because when you're at the business school, and this is going to sound very pretentious and just sort of high horse for a moment, but when you're at the business school, you're at the very top of the university. You're furthest away from the main campus, and you're kind of in a bubble. Everything that's talked about is very business oriented. Um, it's a totally different beast. A lot of the junior, the freshmen and sophomores, they have to do 2 years and then they have to apply to even get into Haas. So it's very, um, dare I say, prestigious to get there. And then once you get there, you're not going to run into a lot of things that, let's say, Berkeley is often known for, of being this super left wing liberal kind of mentality. It couldn't be further from that. It was, if anything, and dare I say, UC Berkeley is actually, or at least as far as the business school is concerned, kind of conservative, very like, I would say center right in a way, where they're like, hey, we're just not going to touch it, until it's a mandate that we have to address it. And we're going to address it in the most business way possible. So there was never like sit-ins or walkouts or anything else. It's like, did you get the work done? Because if you didn't, you're gonna get impacted. And once again, what's the mentality? The mentality is the ABCs. And if you try and participate in a lot of the protests that are going on in or around the school, you're not going to get recruited, right? And for what it's worth, to defend UC Berkeley, and I'm sure a lot of people that have experienced a lot of the unrest or protests that occur, it's not from people within that community. It's people that come from out and into it because it's become this sort of, mecca, if you will, going back to the 60s of the protests of the Vietnam War. And I mean, look, there's plenty of colleges that were protesting. Chicago, Kent State, like there was a tremendous amount of universities that were protesting. Um, so you'll get a lot of this protest, but it's not from the students themselves. It's usually from people outside that come there to do it. And that was definitely from a kid from Napa, California, that's very agrarian. It was kind of an eye-opening experience, but it's very easy to just walk past all of that. And the veteran community, if there's a veterans club, was single-handedly the greatest experience of my college tenure. I absolutely loved it. I ended up becoming president of the club, and you were um, able to meet so many different walks of life. And because the caliber of the college, I think, is going to attract the caliber of students who apply and get in, you're able to be with, Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, fellow Marines, MARSOC Marines, and a lot of us are like work hard, party harder kind of thing of like, hey, did you go to class? Did you get your work done? You did? Great. Let's go get a beer. And we did casino nights and just, like these get togethers, rafting, excursions. Like so much of that is you are privy to once you get in there. And I had too much fun is the best way to say that.
It sounds like my college experience. I like it. No,
Yeah.
it's great. It's
Yeah.
great that you could find it's your tribe. You're always finding your
Yes.
tribe. Even at a place like that,
Yes.
there's still a tribe within a tribe, right? And you found
Yes.
your people, and I talk about that all the time. And I talk about that in a sense of every company and really every college probably the same way, right? I mean, it's about finding the culture fit. And you can go to Amazon's very different culture than a JP Morgan, than a I mean, every company's a little bit different, right? But if you can find that veteran resource group, hopefully you can find something to connect with to get you through some of that challenges and the noise out there. And certainly sounds like they had a great one there at Berkeley, which is very cool. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I highly recommend any listeners right now, if you're applying to a college, definitely look for the veteran club that exists there
Yeah.
because they're probably going to have an advisor that will help you understand the college, the requirements if you're trying to transfer in. But there is absolutely, like you said, the tribe, Sebastian Younger, the tribe mentality, and those groups of guys and girls are going to be it will offer you just that college experience you were always looking for that you probably didn't have.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love to hear that. Well, let's kind of move forward a little bit. Obviously, we talked a little bit about the hot sauce, but all right. So you're doing the accounting thing. Definitely not your bag. You do it for a couple of
Yeah.
years. You start playing around, making beer, making hot sauce, and obviously a little bit of a family tradition of cooking and just kind of being
Yes.
around the kitchen. I mean, I guess why hot sauce? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of them out there. I mean, to be candid, I'm not a
Yeah.
hot sauce, connoisseur. I was a New Orleans guy. New Orleans, we got Tabasco. That's kind of the go-to for a lot of folks.
Crystal, Crystal, Texas
Crystal
Pete.
family is right there.
Yeah.
Balmer family is right there in New Orleans. So I mean, those are right. We grew up with hot sauce, but would love to kind of hear why you picked hot sauce and kind of just how things are going. What's going on in that
Yeah,
world?
yeah, yeah. So, hot sauce is 100% a saturated market. There's something like 400 registered brands, and this is going through Ibis World. Um, so, our work is cut out for us, but excuse me. When I was making the beer, like I said, there was more of an attraction for hot sauce, and I think it's because you could use, or you're not frowned upon if you use hot sauce at 8:30 in the morning on your burrito rather than a beer, right? A beer is something traditionally
In New
speaking.
Orleans, I think it's okay, but otherwise, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So more people were always interested in the hot sauce. And what really jump started it more than anything else was, my wife and I purchased a house in 2020 during COVID because, to get super technical, when COVID hit, we had the earned child tax credit, right? That gave us, with 4 kids, one of the benefits
Yeah.
was that, and then we used that money, we saved it, and then after tax season, we got a rebate, and we used that money to purchase our first home because it would cover the closing costs and help with moving expenses. And we wanted to capitalize on the super low interest rates. And we got a house at 3.25 when 3.25 was 3.25. And we closed June 15th, 2020. And by August 18th, the house burned down in the 2020 LNU fire.
Oh,
So we had to navigate, yes, we had to navigate COVID. And then my wife and I and our 4 kids, a dog and a cat, were living in a hotel, 2 months later. And I knew at that moment I really wanted to go to grad school and get my MBA. And I really wanted to do this hot sauce company because there was so much traction on it. There was so many people that were asking about it. Where can I buy it? I'll pay for the next batch. Um, and I was having so much fun doing it, of like experimenting with recipes and tweaking things, making a hot sauce. And the original concept was, I realized a lot of people would have hot sauce on breakfast burritos and breakfast sandwiches that they would buy at a grocery store or at a truck on the way to work, right? Or at the cafeteria when I worked at Clorox. So I originally just started with making like a breakfast hot sauce, and then it sort of evolved into different styles and flavors. And after the house burnt down, I said, "All right, that's it. I'm going to go to grad school. I'm going to do this. I'm going to work on a business plan for hot sauce." And I think the reason why I landed on it is just because there was, for better or for worse, there was just so much this gravity of the people that I was giving it out to. And I understand that's kind of it's a little bit of a closed loop system. I'm only giving it out to people that I know, and they're more inclined to say this is really good than this isn't good at all, right? Um, but it got to a point because I would put the QR codes that strangers would leave reviews, and so that person that I'd give it out to would give it to a friend or their significant other or whoever it was. So now it became a unbiased review. And it just was something that at the end of the day, I really enjoy doing. I like cooking. I made, pork belly tacos the other day, and I made a pulled pork and making my own Dutch crunch, or some people call it tiger bread. Like I still enjoy cooking and creating to this day. It's just it's for me where I don't have like a mechanical engineering background or an electrical engineering background. I think I probably would have really enjoyed doing it, but for me, it's really more of the culinary aspect. That's just what I grew up with. So I look at that as can I approach this in a scientific way and then get creative with it at the end? So um, why hot sauce? Yeah, just having too much fun, I guess.
it's
Yeah,
all good, man. It's all good.
yeah. People enjoy it.
I'm gonna get a little product demo. You sent me a few samples. They came
I
in the mail
did. Yeah.
yesterday, so I got all three. I got to sample them at Rice the other day, and I'm ready to break into
Yes.
them here and share with my family. So it's great stuff. But you, this is fair to say, you went to graduate school knowing you basically you had that idea of being an entrepreneur in the hot sauce business. So you used that time. Like I went back, got my MBA, but I was just did it to kind of get an MBA. I had no
Yeah.
real like, what am I going to do with it? Like,
Yeah.
hey, it's up to you, right? I got
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But it has to be a different kind of feeling or approach, saying you're taking classes or what everything you're doing is you're trying to build the plan, you're working. That's a great thing to happen. So you really were able to kind of build this plan over a couple years and talk about that a little bit. It's kind of nice to have that, knowing you have an end state to really use this experience, probably more for the network and the time to invest in it. And then when you come out of it, okay, now we're going to roll. Was that kind of your concept?
Yeah. Yeah. I would have to say that if you didn't, you only know what you know and you don't know what you don't know. Very, military intelligence there, right?
Yeah.
there was a lot of tools and metrics that some of them I was aware of, but I didn't understand or comprehend entirely, and I wanted to really learn more about it. Just like even just simple A/B testing and understanding what that is, or taking a marketing course and understanding what a product line is or a product depth is. I think one of the best aspects is doing case reviews of businesses that have found wild success or had a fantastic idea, but their execution just didn't work and then they ended up going under, or even something as kind of comical of like Theranos, of their rise to fame, unicorn status, and such a hard flop, right? So it's great to understand or learn more about what works, what doesn't work, and then why it doesn't work or why it did work. So I think those parts, excuse me, were incredibly beneficial. And I need to get more water. I think for grad school, there's definitely a level of dying.
Don't worry, we can
Hold on,
edit it
sorry.
out. So
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
so you
great.
can grab water or whatever. All good.
Yeah. Um, I think some of the best parts in grad school is really just definitely networking, yes, but maybe looking back at certain concepts with a better microscope and really getting to like the granular data. At the end of the day, though, this is just my own casting Nolan opinion. You can never beat OJT, right? On the job training. You and I both come from the same training to an extent. I understand yours is far more advanced than mine, but um, they can teach you military intelligence in the schoolhouse at Dam Neck, Virginia, but none of that means anything when you actually get to your unit and they say, okay, that's cool. You understand the basics, but this is how we do it, right? And I took business courses in undergrad and I went through grad school, and it'll teach you just enough. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the individual and their ability to adapt, improvise, and overcome, and like just get in the trenches and learn. And I think that that has been single handedly the greatest learning experience by far. Um, no grad class or undergrad class that I took, including a consumer packaged goods class. Like I took a marketing class from a gentleman who used to work at PepsiCo. I took an entrepreneurial class who the instructor was the CEO and founder of Sabra Hummus. If you've ever seen that hummus dip, they'll talk about EBITDA, they'll talk about valuations, they'll talk about scaling effectively, but they won't talk about what is a skew, what is a slotting fee, what are the markups from a distributor, what are we could say, well, what's your customer segment, how do you differentiate your product, but it's like, well, how do you pass on to the customer, how do you get them to, in my world of CPG, how do you get them to actually pick up the bottle and want to try it and then come back? So there's always good fundamentals, and I think it's good to have that, but at the end of the day you just cannot be real world experience, and I think that that is probably the most critical part. For grad school, for me, I think it was very granular. We used a lot of simulations and computers. If you don't know Excel, for sure everybody should learn the basics of Excel, Microsoft Excel. Um, and I use those as data analysis. I could run a simulation, like what's called a Monte Carlo simulation, to maybe kind of like understand how well a product will sell if you go up in price or down in price, or rather like profit margins. Like all these are estimations and assumptions, but it's not going to be actually going out there, on the path and seeing it for yourself. So, do I feel like I got it? the most amount of success going to grad school? No, I don't. And like yourself, I definitely felt like it was just an opportunity for me to like have like a hard reset, and give me time to work on my business plan. But I was probably just as capable with my undergrad in business. And
Roger.
I would recommend everybody, and I tell every veteran and service member that's in, use your educational benefits while you're in, and as soon as you get out, apply to a community college, even if you don't know what your degree is. Take your general ed courses because it might change, and um, you don't know what you don't know. You might find something you really enjoy doing that's completely off what you thought you were going to do. Maybe you wanted to do accounting, but you actually really enjoy mechanical engineering, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that part of it, and then always keep an open mind.
Yeah. I have this image you talking about grad school of the movie Back to School and Rodney Dangerfield when he's at the class. He tells him, "Let me tell you how it really is. You got to pay off this guy. There's this, and the city does this. The permits you don't understand who you're dealing with. Like this whole like the reality of actually getting it done is very
Yeah.
different than what you learn in the book. But it's the
Yes.
fact that we all know that, and you have to have the basics to be successful. I think we all understand that for any entrepreneur, you can't be just blind to the being able to know what a P&L is and just to be able to do the numbers. And
Yes.
you have to have that. That's just kind of like the ante, right? To get in the game, you have to know that. But the reality is you have to get out there and get punched in the face to learn these things, to learn from it and be successful. And
A
that's really
hundred
kind of what
percent.
I'd love to focus on more than anything as we kind of, get toward the end of the podcast. But, what have you learned being a veteran entrepreneur that you would share with others? Like what has made you successful or is hopefully going to make you successful, even more successful moving forward? Like maybe it's like, what do you, wish you knew then that you didn't know and that you do know now? And kind of what words of wisdom might you have for those entrepreneurs out there that are looking to get into whatever space it may be? But, what can you share with others out there to maybe help their journeys get, moving in the right direction?
Great question. Let me think about that for a moment. I believe that a lot of other businesses or potential customers, vendors, whoever they may be, have a lot of respect towards the veteran community, and they really want to support you if you are a veteran or a service member and you're trying to, you know, um, carve out your own path. I think it probably resonates with this underdog kind of concept. So they want to help you, they want to support you. There's definitely a lot of affinity towards that demographic. And if you have a good product or a good service, they're more likely to carry you than just somebody that still lives with their parents kind of thing, who's kind of like wishy-washy or something like that. Like they look at a service member or a veteran in a different lens, and it's only positive. So you actually have a lot more going for you than you think you do. And definitely anybody who's looking to get into the entrepreneurial path, before you launch, ask as many people in that industry as you can, including like potential customers. Let's say you want to do a roofing service. I would ask, not only would I do research on forums or something like that, and state and county codes and laws and businesses, current roofers, let's say. But I'd also ask like your neighbor, what exactly are you looking for? You know what I mean? Like, what exactly is the value proposition? Are you looking for a reliable product? Yeah, obviously. And then probably on price as well. But where else can I add value? Maybe it's a longer guarantee. Maybe it's like anything, a shingle comes off, I'll come and fix it for free, right? Like getting to understand your customer and really have it as like a pull up rather than a push down from the business, but I'm pulling up from the customer, I think is incredibly beneficial. Um, Something that I learned that I would go back and change is when we did our first launch of our hot sauce, we had these labels that I thought were really cool, right? And The artist who drew it was a friend of mine, and I thought she absolutely nailed it. And anything I asked her, she did. And when I would get feedback from our customers who would leave their emails to purchase another bottle, so we're not retailing at stores, I'd send it out and be like, hey, what do you guys think of this label? Everybody would be like, looks great. I love it. It's awesome. Only to then find out when I actually sold the bottles to retailers, they said, you know, this label's very confusing. And I said, oh, what do you mean? They said, it doesn't say what flavor profile, because none of our bottles said what kind of flavor profile it is. It doesn't say how hot it is. Um, the lettering on everything was white and it had a gradient color scheme. So it's super hard to read. Nobody even cares about what it says on the bottle. And I got so much pushback from the retailers, and they still took it and they take it because they tried it. And it was the consensus was you have a really good product, but you have a terrible label. If you at least have that, it will eventually sell. But if you have a stellar label and a terrible product, it'll just collect dust. So they still took us on, but we missed out on a lot more opportunities until we changed our labels. And the lesson learned was I could have asked the grocery store retailers.
Mm.
I could have approached the manager or a grocery store buyer and said, "Hey, I know you're really busy. I'm sorry to bother you. But do you think this label would sell on your shelf?" And I could have gotten the feedback right there and it would have saved me like $8,000, right? Um, but you don't know what you don't know. An expensive lesson learned. But getting feedback early on, and especially from bias and unbiased opinions. Bias in the sense of the retailers and distributors that we currently have, because they would have let me know firsthand. But unbiased, a complete stranger, I don't know who they are. Maybe they would have been like, I actually find this confusing as well. So um, uh, do your research, get opinions, take it with a grain of salt sometimes, because some people could be very critical, and you need to let these outliers go, the good and the bad, because some people will say this is an amazing, stellar service or product you provide, and some people will say this is absolutely terrible. I see no use or value in it, and you need to cut all of those out, and you need to, like it's a bell curve,
Yep.
and you need to get that center opinion, and that is going to be your best sort of deciding factor. Because if you go one way or the other, the far right or the far left, you might run into issues along the way. So research, and then grit. At the end of the day, just to go back on it, you need to have this grit. For me in my business, it's a brawl in CPG. You have to fight tooth and nail every step of the way because it is a very saturated market. I'm not creating a business that's reinventing the wheel or splitting an atom. I think we have a fantastic product, yes, and I think that we differentiate very much on our flavor profile. We don't have sugar, we don't have additives, preservatives, oils, scum, stabilizers. Yes, but I'm also not creating a hot sauce that makes you lose weight and makes you super fit. You know what I mean? Like that would be a overnight success. So um, unless you're creating a product that just is the absolute first of its kind, um, like what Apple did by bringing personal home computing, or what's another really good business that I don't know.
Heck,
Uh,
Amazon. I mean, what they've done to be able to bring, to your, online
Uh,
books,
2 day shipping.
everything they've done from there.
The IP that they own, the one click shopping
Yeah.
experience, Amazon owns that IP. The two
Yep.
day shipping, Amazon owns that IP. Like no
Yep.
business at that time had done that.
Yep.
Sears, to go back, because Amazon, to waste your time and everybody else, and feel free to edit this out. Amazon was a great case study for us because Amazon took over, basically wiped out the mall experience, because now you could buy everything on an online store, right?
Yep.
And a lot of that comes back to the Sears catalog, believe it or not. Amazon replaced what the Sears catalog eventually, or what the Sears catalog was, and then you had malls that replaced the Sears
Oh yeah.
catalog in a way. But the Sears catalog allowed people that lived in a farm town, because the United States was very agrarian and rural at the time. You could purchase a house You could purchase all these things by a catalog, sending money in, and then a product would be delivered. And that put out a lot of these small mom and pop stores at the time, because you used to have to drive into the city to buy furniture. Now you could order through a Sears catalog. Amazon did a very similar approach with digital. And Jeff Bezos himself, agreed that eventually there will be a successor to Amazon. And I don't know if we're seeing it with like Temu or Wish or Alibaba, but there's going to be a successor. I think we all, um, every one of us stands on the shoulders of titans before us, right? We're all
Sure.
able to use our predecessors' success and failures to then kind of mold our own path. So, um, I think that that's a critical
Yeah. I
piece.
mean,
Uh,
learn from history or be doomed by it later, right? If you don't,
yes,
do better.
yes, yes, yes,
And I loved your point that, as an entrepreneur, there's no QRF coming, man, right? You can't like, hey,
yes,
I need a little help because I'm in a
yeah,
little, somebody come take
yeah,
over for me. There's nobody there,
yeah,
right? You're a one
no,
man band, right? I mean,
yeah.
it's a
That's
nice
the actually,
opportunity.
that's yes, that is such I actually will tell myself that quite a bit. I will tell myself there's nobody is coming. And that will kind of get me out of because I think that you could doom spiral really easily. You could say, I owe this vendor, I owe my manufacturer this, I owe money on shipping. Um, People are wanting to place more orders. In CPG, your money is tied up, as you can see here. We have a few cases here in the back. Your money gets tied up in product. So you're not able to pay off people as fast as you'd like. So you run into these kind of issues, and it's very easy to doom spiral, saying like, what am I going to do? How am I going to be able to pay this person, and then how am I going to be able to purchase more, like fulfill orders? Um, and I will often have to tell myself, nobody is coming, and you need to figure it out. And as soon as you accept that, it's like knowing is half the battle. As soon as I'm able to understand the situation and say, all right, man, well, it's up to you. Like, how are you going to solve this problem? You start to get really creative, and the problem eventually resolves itself in that sort of mentality. So, and I think that that's innate in our own nature as humans, right? So,
And I think even more so for veterans. I really do believe, because you hear that from the entrepreneurs that I talk to. It's like, hey, look, you have to realize early on, nobody's come. You got to figure this out yourself.
yeah,
That is how you are successful. Is that you prove you can figure out those challenges out yourself. And you can call friends, and they'll help and they'll do what they can. But at the end of the day,
right.
it's on you, and just
Yes.
understanding that, and just like, hey, that's what I signed up for, and
Yeah.
I'm the brand. You are you are it. You
Yes.
got to make it
Yeah.
happen, right? So yeah,
Yeah. And if you're scared of that, for anybody who's listening, kind of thing, if you're
yeah,
scared of that, do not. Then it's going to be a rude awakening. Yeah, if you
yeah,
focus too much on oh, if you get the cart in front of the horse, if you count your chickens before they hatch, if you say this is going to be so much money, I'm going to get, rude awakening awaits you. There will be. It's like, think about it like you're only going to get 10% of whatever it is you're aspiring for. Um, Yes, but the veteran, and potentially once again, it comes back from that mentality that's instilled in the military of mission oriented, right?
yep, yep.
Complete the mission, and you have to get creative. You have to get resourceful, adapt, improvise, and overcome. Adapt, improvise, and
I love
overcome.
it. I love it. Well, hey, I want to make sure I don't want to stop without how do if anyone wants to purchase Mach One hot sauce, maybe give a plug for the product line, where you can find it, how you get it, what makes it, why should the folks that listen to this podcast buy your hot sauce?
Yeah. Well, if you enjoy hot sauce, you should absolutely give us a try. We're one of the only brands that we roast our ingredients, so you get a natural caramelization of sugars that exists. So we don't add any sugar. There's no gums. There's no stabilizers. There's no preservatives. We're very flavor focused. We believe that a hot sauce should be flavorful before it could be hot. Every hot sauce is handcrafted, and it's gone through multiple iterations along the way. None of this, once again, to go back to it, none of this was a push down on customers of me saying, I think customers are going to really like this, and here's and you know and you know and here's why. It's more of like I really pulled from customers to saying, what kind of hot sauce are you looking for? And some of the best points are flavor complexity, versatility, natural ingredients, strong flavor profile. A lot of people do not want a really hot sauce, and that's what we strive to do. We wanted to make a very flavorful hot sauce that has a punch, and we have three different levels. We have a mild, medium, and hot. And it definitely turns it on the hot, but there is absolutely a fantastic flavor profile that exists. If you wanted to sample for yourself, we have a website. I hate to admit it, but it's not super optimized. It's not the prettiest thing, but it's functional. And any small business entrepreneur would understand and appreciate that. You got to make do with what you have. Um, but we predominantly sell in the Northern California Bay Area. We are just now opening markets in the Southern California area. We do sell in Florida, in Miami, though. I'm sorry. And we're at Meyer stores on the Northeast and a few stores up in Oregon. So we're growing, but for any viewer outside of those very select areas, let's say, 100% try us online. We're mach1hotsauce.com. You'll see it. It's the only hot sauce bottle that has Mach 1 or has a plane on it, right? We also sell in Walmart too.
Oop, here we go.
Yeah. So
There,
brownie
right. Yeah,
points.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. Bo, my question is, do you know the plane that is on the bottle?
I'm looked. No. I'm going to tell you, I'm not a
You're
plane
like, I
guy.
was a recon guy. Yeah, I don't
Yep.
know anything. Yeah. That's the Bell X-1, the Bell X-1, which was flown by Chuck Yeager, an accomplished World War II pilot, ace pilot. But he was the first guy to go Mach 1 on a horizontal plane, literally and figuratively. Um, and that was the first plane that went Mach 1 in 1947, and we wanted to do an homage to that. I love the spirit of aviation. I think that that entire concept is just fascinating to me. In a span of 60 years, we went from the Wright brothers discovering flight to us landing on the moon, right? So pretty innovative. And you see that today with computers and everything else like that. But for its time, very revolutionary, and uh, everything is kind of geared towards spirit of innovation. We're curious by nature, and we love kind of pushing the boundaries of what's possible of what a product, especially what a hot sauce can be.
Love it, man. I love it. Well, hey, it was great having you here today. I am excited for your continued success and growth. I have a feeling one of these days the MilVet will be helping you place some folks into
100%.
your executive roles down the line. So the MilVet's ready when you grow. We're here to help you. But thanks for making the time for us today. Thanks. I think really shared some lessons that can be applicable to any of those veteran entrepreneurs out there. And just your journey has been one that really resonated with me. So thanks for your time. And good luck to you, man. And we'll enjoy the hot sauce. So good stuff.
Thanks for having me, Bill.